Okay, I'm going to talk about Gaza a little bit. What's going on between Israel and Palestine. So, a lot of the mainstream media in the West is obviously pro-Israel. We know that. But even that said, there's plenty of independent media that's pro-Palestine, right? And the thing is I don't like to pick either side. The truth is that there are two sides, okay? And those sides, contrary to popular belief, are not Israel and Palestine. The two sides are the military groups and the innocent civilians. Okay, and you have to understand that who is killing innocent civilians? It's the militaries who are killing innocent civilians on both sides. And who drives those conflicts? Who keeps this vicious cycle of conflict going? It's the militaries on both sides. It's not the innocent civilians, but the innocent civilians are the ones paying the price. The point I'm trying to make here is that the innocent civilians, they have to take control over these authoritarian militant groups. Okay, whether it's Israel's military or Hamas, you can't allow these military groups to continue to swat at each other, because what happens is they end up hurting you. It's not the generals dying in these bombings, right? It's not the leaders of Israel and Hamas who are dying. It's innocent civilians. Again, it, the best thing that Israel and Palestine can do for themselves is for innocent civilians on both sides to come together and help each other. The best thing to do would be for Israelis to walk into Gaza and start helping people, and perhaps vice versa. It's like you see people die at a music festival, and it's like these are just people who are trying to live their lives. They're not people who want to attack this opposition. Now, in some cases, though, or rather, I'll say this: there is an argument to be made that if Israeli civilians, or if Palestinians, if they're complacent to these militant groups, then they're complacent to their behaviors, and they're complacent to the results that their behaviors lead to. The point is that if you continue to think your opposition is Israeli as a Palestinian, or vice versa, then you're feeding this cycle of war. You're feeding the conflicts, the violent conflicts. You have to understand that, again, there's two sides to this conflict, okay? And it's the people fighting, that's one side, and the civilians who don't want to fight. The best thing, again, to do is work across this Israeli Palestinian line. You have to work with the civilians on both sides. They have to work together to solve this conflict. It's not going to be solved by these militaries. Okay, what's going to happen is that the conflict's just going to get worse. Hell, we might be dragged into a world war over this, and that's not good for anyone. That's the thing here. It's like if one side attacks another, and another side attacks back, you're creating a vicious cycle of military operations, of conflict that doesn't end until you make a peace deal. It doesn't end until the people who want peace actually begin to control these military groups. So if you're Palestinian, then the Hamas is your enemy as much as the Israeli army is. And if you're an Israeli, the Israeli army is as much an enemy as to you as Hamas is. This is how you have to see these conflicts. If you don't see them this way, then you're just waiting to be the innocent civilian that gets caught in the crossfire. That's the reality here. Maybe this one didn't affect you, but rest assured that time is coming if you don't start controlling these authoritarian militant groups. The thing is like a lot of people like to think of soldiers as brave. They like to think of, and soldiers are brave, right? But a lot of people like to think of the generals as brave. They like to think about the leaders as brave, the people sending others into war. These people who control these militaries and are not fighting on the front lines, but they're telling these militaries what to do, they are the biggest cowards on the planet. They are the most fearful people on the planet. And I mean this, okay? And the reason for that is because how think about it. I mean, if your only solution to your opposition, to fix your opposition per se, is to kill them, you fear them so much that you fear trying to find another solution. You're so lost in this cycle of fear that you can't even find another solution, a peaceful solution. You're not even willing to try. And it's like, you have to understand how fear controls you. Again, the innocent civilians who just try to live their lives despite the fact that Hamas may attack them at any moment, or that the Israeli army may bomb some block in Gaza at any moment. Those people are braver than the leaders who are hiding behind their security guards and everything. It's comical when you think about the nature of conflict, of war, because a lot of people think that, like, you're brave for sending people to war, but the truth is that the reality is it's much closer to, there's a bunch of cowards sending a bunch of brainwashed people to war. And I don't like using the word brainwashed. I don't like attacking people. I especially don't want to call civilians, or rather soldiers, brainwashed. But what are they fighting for? They think they're fighting for their own their family, right? Their family and their friends. But what ends up happening is they're actually fighting for more conflict in the long term. So just check this out. Just walking. I don't know. Just give that a little thought. Think about the overall pattern that you see when we fight each other. All it does is create more conflict in the future, and the innocent civilians are either the victims or they are the ones fighting themselves. It's never the people who are directing people to fight that are the victims of these conflicts, if you haven't caught on to that yet. Israelis and Palestinians, they need to work together. They need to show that peace between these people is possible. What happens when Israelis walk into Gaza and start cleaning up and start helping people, start providing them with food and water and whatnot, and shelter, and then Israel bombs some of their own people? What happens when that happens? Well, it creates a movement that takes over these militant groups. A lot of people like to, if you say if you call Israelis army a militant group, some people would say that's bullshit. They would say that, no, that's an army, right? They're the military. They're not some rogue militant group like Hamas is. But the truth is just the only difference between them is scale, right? They're all thugs, and until the civilians, who are greater in number, take over these groups of thugs, until peaceful civilians start running these military groups, nothing's going to change. And again, you're just waiting around to be the victim to one of these bombings or one of these attacks that are completely unpredictable. It's hard to, I don't know, it's hard for me to justify any military action at all, because I know the long-term effects of military action against your opposition. The long-term effects are more military action in the future. You can either make a conscious decision to recognize this pattern and attempt to stop it, or you can contribute to it. And if civilians are complacent to the military that they're funding, then to some extent, they're asking for it. They're asking to be murdered by some militant group from their opposition, randomly at some music festival. And I don't like saying that people deserve to die, because it's not really what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is that complacency catches up to you, okay? And that's what you have to realize. And maybe you'll be lucky. Maybe it will never affect you or anyone you love, but in all likelihood, it will eventually. And this isn't just an Israel-Palestine theme, right? There's plenty of complacency in the United States as well, and we're now seeing that, right? I mean, we're seeing that in Ukraine now. We're seeing that with the tax dollars that are just funneled out of this country to kill people, and it's hurting Americans too. The point here is that if you allow, I just made a video yesterday about fear, I think, but if you allow fear to control your behaviors, you're going to manufacture more fear in the long term, and that fear is going to manufacture more violence, and eventually that violence builds to where it affects you. Eventually it's your son or your grandson going and fighting in the wars, or eventually it's your music festival that gets attacked. It's a slippery slope. Fear is a slippery slope. Violence is a slippery slope, and we as the innocent, peaceful civilians, even if you're an Israeli and you look at Palestinians unfavorably or vice versa, you have to get rid of those differences and realize that both of you would rather yell at each other and be peaceful from a physical standpoint than to be shooting each other. Give it a little thought. Thanks for watching.